Hello, friends. Welcome to Table for Two, your D&D duet podcast where we explore the inner workings of one individual with a split mind. My name's Jana Harrison. I'm going to be our player for this evening. And Nick, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Nick Kennedy. I'll be the dungeon master this evening, and a couple other faces as well as we explore our world of Vile and this creepy tale of, fractured minds, fractured personas, and just generally cosmic horror and buried truths. So if everybody's ready, we have a seat at the table for you.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and start diving in then.
Yeah, we've got a lot of ground to kind of recover. In our first episode, we learned a lot. So we're going to spend a little bit of time going over some details again, just because there's a lot of lore dumping and a lot of little intricate things that I think Quinn and maybe yourself had to get familiar with. So our story began with Quinn awaking at home in the city of Varnes. Born and raised there, it is a city that was grown from a trading post, a textile trading post, into an industrial powerhouse of sorts that is now suddenly finding itself falling behind in this new kind of industrial economic revolution that the world of Vile is facing as magic fades and other technologies rise to replace it. Quinn, our player and main character, is a studious, scholarly wizard with a passion for the arcane, pretty invested in rescuing magic and restoring it to its former glory. Quinn is a part of an arcane recovery task force through the Rutherford Conservatory, basically the main college, not only in this region, but in the city of Varnes specifically. And upon waking, heads into work, meets up with a friend of theirs, also a coworker, Marin Gearsworth, another member of the AR task force. They head in and have a meeting with their boss, whose name is Elias Dorn, the headmaster of the Rutherford Conservatory. He introduces you all to a rather interesting character, an investigator. On loan, you gathered over time on a sort of side project. Celine Drake. She's investigating a disappearance. Another coworker of yours, a Professor Alaric Cade, whom you hadn't heard from in some time, and neither had anyone else in the conservatory. It turns out Professor Cade and Celine Drake had also been looking into other causes for the decay of magic around the world. And Professor Cade had some rather interesting theories. They may have seemed a little kind of crackpot crazy, conspiracy theory type notions. But the two of them, along with a third compatriot who was a little bit later revealed to you, had some ideas and were starting to track down some leads. Along this journey, Alaric apparently may have tipped his hand too far and disappeared. Celine agreed to work with Quinn as a sort of goodwill gesture towards the Rutherford Conservatory, but also as a way of keeping her eye on the members of the Arcane Recovery Task Force. You come to find out through working with her that you all were not above suspicion in his disappearance either. This plot that they had been investigating seems to have ties that run very deep in the history and the people of the city of Varnes. You begin your journey in tracking down these leads at the Black Loom Tavern, this really run-down, it's literally the oldest tavern in all of Varnes, out-of-the-way place where you meet the third compatriot in their little investigative party, Marcellus Locke. who helps to kind of corroborate and direct your attentions after some of the clues Celine revealed to you all left you a little puzzled. So she had searched Alaric's office and found a partial journal entry as well as a note referring to a couple of different locations and a meeting. The meeting was with this Marcellus Locke. The location, which Marcellus helps you uncover and provides a map to, is apparently an underground tunnel system beneath a place known as the Witch's Steps, which is just outside of the city, essentially, just past the farmlands and just kind of before the wilds of greater Autumnia and Vile. Marcellus also shares some kind of interesting lore and background about the history of Varnes. We spend a bit of time discussing the evolution of the textile trade and the Wooltown Trading Company, and their history and some of the odd facets of their early being, their board and their members and their odd rituals, which he mentioned because of a particular piece of cloth that was left at his home after it had been apparently ransacked. It was a shimmering golden scrap of wool, which he mentioned was a bit of ceremonial garb from the first board of the Wooltown Textile Company, but hasn't been spun in decades. And I believe he had also handed you a piece of black wool, just from some regular robes as well. Lastly, on the map that he'd given to you, which was guiding you generally towards the Witch's Steps, through some happenstances of a spilled drink, Quinn noticed a strange marking in one location. It was a golden drawing of a crook with very faint etchings of what looked like inky black tentacles wrapping its way up the shaft of this shepherd's crook image. So when you and Celine eventually left Marcellus, with, I think, the understanding that he would help to kind of continue investigating as best he could, you headed towards the Witch's Steps, which is kind of through the slummier sides of Varnes, and like I said, out towards the wilds. And you found yourselves approaching the old Grimfire Chapel, situated right next to a graveyard. As you approached, you noticed that same golden crook symbol etched, almost like burned, into the old oak door. Investigating the chapel further, you found there were trails of, well, not trails, a trail of footprints in the dust leading down this central aisle in between the rows of dilapidated pews. At the front of the aisle was what appeared to be a half-rotted, partially desecrated almost, looking like pulpit. And the footprints just stopped right there. So following very carefully in those footprints so as not to disturb the space, you worked your way up to that pulpit and eventually determined that it was at least somewhat a bit of illusion magic covering a tunnel, or a hole that led down into the earth into a tunnel. This secret entrance leads you down into this kind of winding cavern tunnel system, which is what you believe was depicted on that map. You realized you're heading kind of towards the Witch's Steps, towards tunnels that may at some point connect to underdark caverns and what have you, but a lot of the tunnels you were traversing at first seemed to be kind of regularly traveled. They're reinforced, and as you follow that path of places that are obviously being used, you found yourself coming to the mouth of kind of a larger cavernous opening. Literally had teeth-like stalactite intrusions coming up from the floor and the ceiling. And you heard voices from that room. You interrupted what appeared to be some sort of awful ritual and practice. It turns out Alaric Cade had in fact been kidnapped by what looked to be some sort of cultists, practicing essentially a waterboarding ritual. His face was covered in golden cloth, and water of some sort of shimmering color was being poured out of a jug, seemingly endlessly, onto his face while he was held down. And four individuals, I believe it were, stood around him, all chanting in a language you were not familiar with. After kind of attempting to, I think, blend in with them, trick them into believing you're one of the cultists, while also kind of simultaneously getting Celine to work her way deeper into the cave off to the side and try to pull off a bit of a sneak attack or something like that. Things eventually kind of go sideways, and what starts off as a well-intentioned plan to save Alaric ends in a bloody melee combat of face-to-face, knife to gut, quite literally, which ends with Celine Drake falling to the floor lifeless behind you, moments before you, Quinn, are run through with a sword. You drop down, falling lifeless on the ground, watching Alaric Cade seemingly return to life and sit bolt upright. And then everything faded to black, and it's in that blackness that you met someone new. A voice that didn't identify itself simply began speaking to you, seemingly from everywhere, almost as though it were in your being, offering you a choice. Give yourself to this being, which you can tell is immensely powerful, and you will in turn be granted power. The power to save magic. And you're assured this being wants the same thing. And you agreed to this pact. Silence settles over you. You had been sinking into this blackness, this darkness, almost receding away from the surface of a sea, falling to the very depths, but you suddenly find yourself bubbling back up to life. Literally, there is a torrent raising you out of unconsciousness back towards conscious waking life. And you can feel yourself being drawn back, shot up towards the surface with this vigor. And as you come back to consciousness, you're still lying prone on a stone floor, but you spit water up out of your mouth. A gush of water comes shooting up out of you. You're lying flat on your back, and your head just slams back down on this cold stone floor. Your face is soaking wet, just wet all over, gasping for air. What is your first thought?
Where am I? And they're going to look around, observing their surroundings. And they're going to look over and see Celine. That's right. I kind of remember this.
Make a Constitution saving throw, please.
It's going to be a 12.
Okay. I need you to roll 1d6.
Two.
You will take 2 points of psychic damage as Quinn's memories rush back into your brain. In a haze, a flurry, you recall bits of Celine Drake stepping down the ladder, coming downstairs, fighting alongside her, caring about keeping her alive, and panicking as you watched the life being sucked out of her face and then her head being bashed in with a golden hammer. But you don't remember why you cared so much.
This is curious. And they're going to get up, try to push themselves back up from the ground, and look around again. Still sitting, but wanting to see if they can find a balance. Something that brings them back to why they're here.
Make a Constitution check.
That sounds better a little bit. 13.
Okay. You feel some intense queasiness, as though you're about to feel very sick and maybe need to vomit, but you hold it down and you just kind of steady yourself. There's just this awful smell in the air that seems to be upsetting you. It doesn't come rushing back to you just yet. What's your passive perception?
Passive perception is a 14.
So as you're sitting up and looking around, you'll notice at basically the far end of the cavern, like the direction your feet are facing, is what looks to be this big stone altar. And you can tell it's dripping wet, covered in water. It's almost like streaming towards you. And for a moment you wonder, was I drinking all of this water? Was I on that? Like, why are you spitting up water?
I'm going to move a little bit away, kind of curl my feet in, like they're trying to avoid touching the water.
As you back away, your hand slips on something. As you pull it up, your hand is covered in blood.
Is this mine? And they're going to start checking to see if they can find whose blood it is.
When you look down at yourself, there is a large hole in your clothing. A slash that is still red with blood. The flesh beneath it, completely fine. On the floor behind you, almost kind of sparsely scooted into now, is a pool of blood. And a few feet further behind that is another pool of blood. And then a few feet beyond that is the body of Celine Drake.
I'm going to begin standing and turn toward the body of Celine. And again, trying to figure out, why do I care for this woman? What did she mean to me? And I'm going to begin to walk over.
As you take a couple steps closer to her, you notice in her left hand, seemingly having pulled it's like mid pulling something out of her inner coat pocket, a bit of golden wool. And suddenly you have a flash of memory of sitting in a tavern, having a drink with Celine and someone else, discussing the importance of golden wool and odd ceremonies and boards of textile companies, and then a long walk and a horse ride on a carriage from the city out to somewhere in the middle of nowhere. You were doing something together. Make a Constitution saving throw.
15.
You make your save this time, but you recall you and Celine were working together. You were looking into something.
And I'm going to kind of crouch down, take the wool out of Celine's hand and put it in my pocket. And as I'm starting to put it in my pocket, I again see the gash in my shirt. Ugh, this simply won't do. And I'm going to remove Celine's leather jacket to cover my own.
Okay. You feel and hear, but unlike the edge of your senses here, it's almost like the passing of a wind, except there's no wind, but it sounds like just a mutter, a humming of assessment.
I'm going to look over both my shoulders just to see if this eerie sense has anything relevant in the current surroundings, if there's anything that I can see as far as, is there anyone else in here with me?
Make a perception check. Starting this session with a lot of rolls.
I know. This one's good, though. This is a dirty 20.
Okay. There is no one in this space with you. When you turn around, there's only the lifeless form of Celine Drake on the floor. You notice there is a couple of pools of blood on the floor in essentially the center of the room. The altar at one end, covered in water. Just kind of, say, 20 degrees to the right of that, along this kind of curved back wall, you see a section of stone pushed in and ajar, almost as though a hidden entrance has been opened, revealed in the stone. Behind you, what looks to be probably the entrance of the cave is stalagmites, stalactites, making this almost mouthy-like, rocky tunnel that leads out. You have no recollection of the secret door. But as you turn around, you kind of spin back and forth, round and round, looking for anybody in this space. You find it to be disturbingly devoid of any sign of any kind of activity. But as you're turning around, you always feel like there's something right behind you, looking over your shoulder.
As I'm going back and forth and feeling just this eerie presence, I'm going to mutter under my breath, "Are you watching me?" And then start to make my way toward the secret door.
Always.
Where do you want me to go from here? And I'm still walking toward the door, trying to exert some kind of reaction of the right way or the wrong way.
You will need to go into yourself first. Tell me, what is your name?
And even though I had been moving toward the door previous, I'm going to stop. That's a curious question. I don't believe I've ever been given a name. You can call me Reve.
Fitting, Reve. What do you remember?
Not much. The woman, we were searching for something. Someone.
She is no longer relevant. You are searching for something. We are searching. Do you recall our agreement?
It's power we seek.
Not just any power. The power of the arcane. Do you not feel it coursing through you?
I do. Whoever I was before, they struggled to acquire this. They're searching for it. I seem to have it.
This is but a taste, young Reve. We've only just begun. There is much more that can be learned and unlocked. Should you heed my direction?
So as long as I follow you, I can acquire more of this arcane power.
Indeed. There is no limit to what we can accomplish together.
I'll bite. Let's see how far we can go.
Then first you must return to your home.
I don't know if I remember a home. They never really let me make a home.
I will guide you to your domicile. And we will make a new home. Return to the tunnel.
Reve's gonna stare almost longingly at the secret door before turning around and heading back toward the tunnel entrance.
This voice will gradually start to fade into sensations as you begin to walk further away from this place. But the sensations will linger, and it will be almost like a bit of a beacon, a pull, if you will, subconsciously, in the direction. It guides you back to the ladder, up to the church, out the front door. And as you walk out of this dusty old church, you notice off on the horizon, as the sun is setting, large, long shadows are being cast by this great wall that is enclosing the city of Varnes. That is your destination. You're being pulled towards the center of that city.
And Reve is going to continue to follow the pool. For Reve, it almost feels like they're following a thread through the city. And as they're following this thread, the sensation, while a little overwhelming, is slightly intoxicating. Reve is enjoying seeing the movement, the activity, the sights, the smells, the noises. And they're almost giddy with excitement instead of feeling overwhelmed by this newness and this new world that they're seeing. They feel like it's a game and they're excited to play.
Are there any specific smells, sounds that connect with Reve in particular?
The one distinct smell that is definitely sticking out to Reve as they're going through, and something that's a little more familiar from their subconscious, they believe, is the smell of wheat and grain baking, the smell of yeast in the air, and the sounds of just the general city life, hearing the carriages, the people chatter, and some of the more, I would say, probably industrial noises. Hearing factory workers, machinery happening inside. Probably the sound of any working bells or horns going off. They feel a little more familiar. But it was almost like this veil has been lifted to these sensations. And they're experiencing it in a much more visceral way than they had before.
That scent, that smell of wheat and flour and baked goods, that really connects to that thread, that pull. And Reve, I think, follows that a little bit more specifically than anything. Those feelings, those sensations kind of get intertwined. Those threads weave around one another as Reve, traverses deeper into the city. And as it gets stronger and stronger, you start to put together that you're getting closer to home, or at least to the place that was Quinn's home.
Mm-hmm.
You round a corner on a city street. You're in kind of a nice part of town at this point, lined with tall, kind of fine apartment buildings, old brick style. Some have shops underneath them. There's some floating magical kind of lampposts. There's some actual electrical lampposts lining some areas as well. And some rather nice carriages go past here and there. Not a ton of people out on the sidewalks here. Except for down at the end of this block, where there's a little bit of a commotion going on out in front of one building in particular. As you join the crowd, you notice there is a big glass window that has been shattered on the front side of what appears to be a bakery. Just next to the entrance to this bakery is a doorway that suddenly feels very familiar to you. The door is busted open, and there's stairs that lead up from that door.
Reve is going to shove their way past the people not being very subtle about it or necessarily cautious, but more of a just moving past them, not really caring if they hit shoulders or elbow people or push them to the side. And they're going to start coming out of the crowd and making their way to the doorway and the stairs.
As you push your way through the crowd, that smell of baked goods turns into the smell of burn, like charred. Things forgotten about in the oven for too long. You can't even fully see through the window yet necessarily, but you instantly smell something is wrong in there.
Reve is going to stand in front of the shattered window and look into the bakery, tilting their head to the side and trying to see if they can recognize anything, as well as trying to address the uneasiness of something being wrong. And maybe uneasy isn't the right word for Reve, but noting that something isn't sitting quite right.
As soon as you peek your head in, the sight of destruction is pretty apparent. The glass display cases inside have been smashed in. All of the baked goods and pastries that were in there have been just crumbled, stomped on, smashed into glass. The iron oven set behind the counter has scorch marks on the wall behind it, and there is black soot just built up on the ceiling above it. The iron door almost seems partially melted off the front of this giant baker's oven. There was obviously like some sort of blaze going on in that space. It's been put out. There's no more fire at the moment, but the space has been obliterated.
As Reve is looking at the oven specifically and noticing the scorch marks, do those scorch marks appear unusual? And would Reve know that typically the way that an oven would be scorched would be around the opening? And are these scorch marks in different areas of the oven and not where they would be traditionally seen?
Make an investigation check, please.
Investigation. Ooh, okay. It's another dirty 20.
Okay. Yeah, this is an unnatural occurrence. Excuse me. This wasn't just some accident. Reeves no baker, but it's pretty apparent that if something was like left in this oven, even all night, it wouldn't result in the kind of catastrophe you're seeing here. This was clearly some kind of intentional mishap.
Interesting. Reve is going to say, and then they're going to head to the stairs and go up the stairs.
At the top of the stairs, there's a small landing, and to the right is another door that is ajar. You can see where the handle and the lock fit into the door jamb and have just been busted open. There's bits of wood and splinters. The door itself is just hanging wide open at this point. Inside is a small room. Looks like it was pretty sparsely decorated. A bed, a few small belongings, a writing desk, a small bookshelf. All of those things thrown about. Like mattress on the floor, pillows cut open, drawers pulled out of desks, books on the floor, quills all over the place, ink pots spilled. Standing in the center of this mess is a 7-foot tall orc with with 9 fingers, glasses, just looking around at everything, puzzled. But this is a hulking figure in the middle of a destroyed room.
Reve is going to slowly steady themselves first. And slip a dagger up their sleeve to keep it hidden. And at this hulking figure, they're going to confront them and say either you're incredibly rude or a very messy individual.
At that, this giant orc will turn towards you and gives you a big, toothy smile. Like, uncomfortably, genuinely happy smile. Oh, Quinn, I'm so glad you're alive. Oh, jeez, my heart. And he starts to take a few steps towards you, quickly, arms open.
And Reve is going to essentially like shuck the dagger out of their sleeve and grasp at the hilt and hold it in front of them. I don't believe I am who you think I am.
Quinn, what are you talking about?
I am not the one they call Quinn. You can address me as Reve.
Takes glasses off, wipes them, puts them back on. Quinn, we're standing in your apartment right now. What is going on with you? Where have you been? Maybe you should have a sit down. Please, here. And he, reaches over, starts to kind of pick the mattress and stuff back up off the floor and tries to set it back on the bed frame. Please, have a seat. Let's just talk.
You can sit there. I'll stay here, and you can begin to talk.
Quinn, you're scaring me.
Who are you?
Quinn, you know me. Marin. Quinn, Marin Gearsworth. We've worked together for years. Please.
Where do we work?
At the Rutherford Conservatory. We were just there yesterday, but you've been missing all day.
The woman.
Yes. Investigator Drake. She was with you. Where is she?
I'm not sure if her name was Drake.
Quinn, you left with her. You spent the whole day with her. What do you... What happened to you? It's right when he says that Marin notices the gaping hole hidden behind your jacket, ever so gracefully. But there's a little bit of gash that runs up and a tiny bit of blood. Quinn, were you hurt?
Reeve's gonna look down. Oh, Quinn may have been hurt, but I seem to be fine.
Do you mean Quinn? You are Quinn. Who is Reve? What is going on?
I am Reve.
Okay. You look an awful lot like my friend Quinn. Quinn Thole, to whom this apartment belongs. What brought you to this apartment?
A pool. Something pulled me toward this apartment. And Reve is going to start looking around a little bit more. They still have the dagger in their hand, but they're kind of walking along the edge of the apartment, picking up items as they pass by and kind of putting them haphazardly. Coming across some of the few items of tableware, utensils, mugs, and picking it up and putting them back on the shelf, but not in any orderly fashion, just kind of flopping them there. Kind of spinning around, a spoon in their hand and examining it. Picking up some of the papers that were on the ground, and Reve starts to look more curiously at the papers on the ground and picking them up and trying to see if they understand them, if the writing is familiar, if they remember any of the information that is on these papers.
Make a Constitution saving throw.
Nat 1.
Roll a d6, please.
1.
Okay, you take 1 point of psychic damage as hours of Quinn sitting at that tiny desk poring over scribbles comes flooding into your brain.
And Reve is going to drop the papers and just clutch their head and start to collapse on the floor with this flood of memories. Trying to regain control, to not be overwhelmed by these memories. And then from their knees, they're going to look up at Marin and say, Quinn was your friend?
Yes, Quinn, what's going on? Can I do anything?
What was their purpose?
Well, Quinn, sorry. Quinn was really adamant about wanting to save magic. It's kind of disappearing.
You don't seem as concerned about this. At least not as concerned as Quinn was.
Well, I find there's other solutions to life's problems. I'm rather handy in my own way. But you already know this, don't you, Quinn?
Marin, I've already said that I'm not Quinn. I'm Reve.
Reve, I can still see the stain on your shirt from the coffee when we bumped into each other yesterday.
Oh. This won't do. And Quinn is going to look around the apartment to see if they can find any where Quinn might have stored their clothes or a wardrobe. And as they start to find the wardrobe and they're going to open it, they're going to kind of do that like comical thing where you see someone pulling out like an item of clothing and going, no. And Reve is clearly frustrated by the plainness of Quinn's clothing.
I was going to say, I imagine Quinn's belongings are rather modest, very unadorned, just like the bare necessities. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So is Reve just like entirely unimpressed with all this?
Oh, this is so boring. Marin, where can I find something more elegant?
Well, all the shops are surely closed at this hour. You,
And?
well, there'd be nobody there to sell you any new garments. I have some things that might fit you at my house.
All right. Take me to your home. You
You'll
can ask
notice
me questions.
Marin is a little flamboyantly dressed. He tends to wear like a long red coat. It is singed in quite a few places, like specifically around the collar and at the like hem of the sleeves. And there's quite a few like pockmarked holes here and there. But beyond that, he's got like a frilly collared shirt under it, and he's got some like really polished looking like brass belt buttons on most of his clothing and like on his belt, and he's even got brass buckled shoes on. He makes a lot of noise when he walks around. So I think Reve would put together that there might be some stuff in Marin's wardrobe that could work, potentially.
I might be able to make do at least.
It would perhaps be safest for us to at least spend the rest of this evening at my house as well. Clearly, someone has been into your belongings. I gather in relation to whatever you and the inspector were up to.
I need to ponder that as well. Before we leave, Reve is very specifically now looking around to see if Quinn kept a journal or diary. Which Quinn likely has something similar, but maybe not exactly the traditional Dear Diary, more of a log of notes, a research journal. So they're going to start searching to see if they can find that.
Okay. Make an investigation check.
Yeah, 20. I was like, I swear to God, if Reeve misses this.
It's not going to be too hard, thankfully. There is a like a footlocker, a big trunk, essentially, at the end of the bed. It's been tossed open, and some of the belongings have been yanked out of it, but still inside is a series of numbered and dated, like scientific journals. You'll notice the last seemingly 3 or 4 months worth are missing, and what is probably the last 6 months have been yanked out and opened. And there's at least another 2 years worth of books, sequentially, organized, dated, and everything, still in that footlocker.
Of course, those bastards. And Reeve is actually going to grab the first two from the first year. And the most recent ones that remain. I would probably say the last 3. And then tell Marin, they may have the most recent, but everyone knows you have to start at the beginning.
So you don't remember anything about Quinn?
It's not like I don't remember anything, but they're flashes, more like pulses of moments. Quinn and I didn't really chat much.
I find this to be rather concerning. I think perhaps it would be best if in the morning we went and spoke with the headmaster. He may be able to suggest some healers that can help us assess the nature of this rift in your consciousness.
I don't know if I'm fond of this idea, but if it sheds some light, perhaps I'll think on it.
We can discuss more at my house. It's getting rather late. For right now, we should at least clear the premises here. Let's head over to mine.
Okay. And Quinn is, or Reve is going to shove Quinn's journals and just like one of Quinn's really simple bags just to make it easier for carrying. But while Marin is leading the way toward their home, Reve is going to be reading the first notebook and flipping through the pages. Again, starting
Is
at the
there
beginning.
anything in particular that would stand out?
Reve is looking more for notes that Quinn may have regarding motivation. Seeing if Quinn has listed anything in these journals that state why the search for the arcane is so important to them. And at the same time, trying to understand what efforts Quinn has already made in recovering the arcane.
So I think a lot of what you find in these journals is written from the perspective of a sort of strict scientific mind. When you look for motivation, you find hypothesis and experimentation notes, and then conclusions. So you have to really work to interpret motivation. And it might take some time to really kind of absorb more material to really get to the bottom of that. On the surface, plain text, many of the hypotheses that you come across are essentially along the lines of testing causes for the decline of magic and or testing ways to restore magic. And most of the conclusions are like negative results, i.e. like experiment failed with no change.
And Quinn, Reve, as they're running through Quinn's journals, is going to just lightly comment, Marin, I'm afraid your friend has no personality. You're incredibly drab.
It's funny you should say that. I've often told, well, you, that you need to lighten up a bit. I will say, you know, you are rather talented, though. You've helped me quite a few times improve many of my rather odder trinkets, if you will.
Trinkets.
Well, if it hadn't been that infusion you helped teach me, I never would have gotten this little beauty working. And he reaches into one of his deep coat pockets and pulls out what looks like a hand-sized cannon. Like a replica on a battlefield cannon. But as it sits in his hand, it kind of adheres to his hand, so he can kind of turn his hand sideways and it would still remain attached to his hand. I know it looks like a toy, but this is a rather powerful artifact that Quinn helped me tinker with.
This is interesting. Have you played with it?
Well, and he looks down at their jacket. There were quite a few iterations and experiments before we got it functioning properly. I would say yes, I have played with it. Quinn would probably say we experimented repeatedly.
but have you, like, gone out and really played with it?
Well, it's a bit too powerful now, I'm afraid, to just play with.
That's disappointing.
You know, I've had quite a few other things that Quinn's helped me with. I mean, there's plenty more in my place. I'll show you when we get there. He starts to go on talking a little bit more about some other projects you guys have worked on in the past, and a little bit about your work on the Arcane Recovery Task Force. You gather a lot of Marin's influence or contributions to the conservatory are meant to be like the middle ground, like practical solutions for where the world is now, but also from the perspective of how can the conservatory, which has long been a school that studies magic and teaches the study of magic, stay relevant in a world that is relying less and less on magic. Not that Marin minds, necessarily, but it's almost as though Marin's passion is used for the school's benefit, when really Marin just wants to continue to play with fun toys, and whether that means they are powered by magic or come purely from creative invention, 6 of one, half dozen of the other to Marin. It's the playing and the experimentation parts that are fun.
Marin, I'm curious. What would you do if Quinn did find a solution to the diminishing of the arcane?
Honestly, I think I'd try to make a bigger one of these.
Do you think you'd still be relevant?
I think there's place in this world for technology and magic. After all, what is magic but technology we don't understand?
That's an interesting perspective.
Well, I come from a family of inventors. We see everything as a problem to be solved and a solution to be solved.
Interesting. And Reve is going to put away the first journal that they were flipping through and pull out the more recent one that they were able to acquire. Marin, did Quinn keep notes anywhere else aside from their apartment?
I'm sure there's some small selection of notes in Quinn's office.
And that's back at the conservatory?
Yes.
And you said everything else is closing. Is the conservatory still open to us, or would it have to be a little B&E situation?
I'm afraid that breaking and entering on conservatory grounds is, well, likely impossible. While magic is fading, they still have quite a few arcane enchantments in place. The security there is rather tight. And it is closed this hour of the night. But if we are to meet with Headmaster Elias in the morning, we can pop in to the office as well.
I suppose. And I really do want to get out of these clothes.
And you've been walking for a few minutes now, kind of like walking, talking, reading here and there. You're heading west into the Haunted Gate district, which is kind of a more rundown neighborhood. But you're kind of walking away from the conservatory. Not that you're fully aware of this, Reve, but you can tell this pull. What you're realizing now is maybe your desire, your motivation, but it gives you kind of a subconscious direction at the same time, is behind you. The pole is away from where you're going right now, but you're following Marin towards his home. And it's only a couple more minutes before you kind of round another corner and head down a significantly narrower block. It's almost like you're walking down some alleys here. These tall, kind of like tenement-style apartment buildings with clotheslines running back and forth across, third level apartments with people having linens strung up and clothes out to dry. The smells here are different. You smell animal waste just on the street. You actually smell ale in open air taverns. There's a lot more hustle and bustle going on in this neighborhood too. The sounds of just nightlife. It's not like the streets are packed with people. We're not talking like Mardi Gras or anything, but just the general sort of bustle of nightlife. And it's with a kind of like smile that Marin turns to you and says, "Just past that tavern there is my place. We're almost there."
Okay. And Reve is looking around, kind of taking it in, enjoying a little bit more of the activity. Again, allowing themselves to experience more of what is happening around them and consuming it. Whereas Quinn was resistant to experiences, Reve is very excited about it and is ready to engage or interact. And Reve starts kind of eyeing the people that are walking around and trying to gauge more of the action. Trying to discern maybe the type of person, looking around to see if there's someone who maybe might be just a little rowdy that they want to keep their eye on.
So as you see people kind of coming and going, there's actually like a couple of, there's the tavern that Marin was referring to is kind of just ahead of you on the right, but there's also one kind of just behind you to the left, and you see a few groups of people kind of going back and forth in between the two. The traffic on this block in particular seems to kind of just like shift back and forth from one bar to the next. There's quite a few people that seem like they could be, trouble, or like they could be a little rowdy. There's a lot of people around you already pretty in their cups. And it's maybe midnight. I mean, it's late, but it's not, no one should be drunk yet late. As you take all of this in, you notice the people in this part of town are just kind of a different type of people to begin with. Not only is it mixed species here, but they all appear to be mostly like working class, kind of salt of the earth. They're just dressed differently than the people in Quinn's neighborhood. A lot of less pomp, less care for appearance. People's hair is down. Got some more skin showing. There's people walking around barefoot. There's singing happening inside these taverns. And there is the smell of food, too, coming from all kinds of directions. All sorts of different smells. Lots of spices on the air. And there's just the smell of, like, sweat at the same time, too, as people, like, hurriedly run back and forth, spilling drinks on each other and shouting after one another as they chase each other through the street.
Fascinating. Much more excitement here. Have you ever tried to take Quinn here? What does Quinn do in this type of environment?
Quinn, I've never seen you awake this late at night before.
Oh, this is disappointing. And it's Reve, please.
My apologies. This is going to take some getting used to.
Marin, would we be able to grab a pint? Right?
Oh,
Is
I
that
don't
the
know. It's
phrase?
awfully late. Yes, that is the phrase. And as you're asking him, there's like people still kind of like bustling past you, carrying drinks from one place to the next, and there's a little like splash of ale up against you all, and the smell kind of washes over you, and you can see Marin enjoying that smell. Marin looks like they want to say no. Uh,
Come
all right, just the
on.
one. We go to this tavern, and then we go straight up to my apartment.
All right.
All right, let's see here. Give me just a second.
As you're pulling info, though, Quinn is probably going to Reve is going to catch their reflection in the glass somewhere. And they're going to see basically how Quinn composed themselves and again, tight knot, their hair tied back and, put together. And they're going to go, oh, this poor sap. And they are going to undo their hair, kind of ruffle it around, make it a little more loose, a little more free. And even though they're in a very prim and proper collar, clean shirt, even though it has the gash, Reve is going to kind of pop the collar of the shirt up and over the leather jacket that they have from Celine and unbutton the shirt a bit so you can see the undershirt underneath, but it's easier for them to hide the slash in the shirt before and make it look a little more loose, a little more free and flowy while they're popping into this tavern. Feeling a little bit better about their appearance, not as close to the collar.
Okay. So a looser, yeah, more like friendlier vibe, essentially. Sounds like.
I would say almost a little more wild.
Okay. Okay. So you walk towards the door of the tavern known as the Spectral Mug. Walking into the Spectral Mug, you walk into an atmosphere of this kind of lively camaraderie with this kind of otherworldly undertone. The walls are decorated with these ghostly lanterns that are just flickering, kind of like in sequence, as though there's like a whisper kind of going in between lanterns. And the air is just filled with laughter and sense of ale, and there's some kind of like stew seemingly brewing somewhere. You hear music playing at the far end of this kind of like a long alleyway style building. At the very far end, like deep at the back, is a very small band on a tiny stage playing some small string instruments. Hard to hear though over the clamor of kind of people packing into this place. Marin points up to those lamps on the wall. Looks like magic, right? It's not. I had to wire those things.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, means I get some free drinks here every now and then, so let's head over to the bar. I think I see the bartender right now.
And Reve is going to go ahead and follow along.
The house special is known as the Spectral Ale. It is essentially just a tankard of ale, but the ale itself is kind of a pale, almost like entirely translucent color. It's seemingly like a clarified beverage. There's no like golden hue to it like you would expect from a beer. There's no like brown kind of barley scent on it even. As soon as you lift it up to your nose, though, you get this strong waft of barley, hops, malt, everything that you expect from a beer or an ale, But when you look at it, it almost appears as though it's water.
Because this is how it's supposed to look, right? This is
Oh,
normal?
yes. This is normal, and it's good. Cheers.
Cheers. And Reve is going to go ahead and take a drink. And let the sensation kind of come over them. Again, not having any experience in this realm. Kind of the carbonation from the ale taking over with that mouthfeel, and Reve is slightly confused about this new sensation. And while they were initially hesitant because of the lighter toned color, reminding them a little bit of the water that was back at the altar, they realize that it's not giving them the same nauseous scent that they had earlier. And they're just enjoying the different flavors that they're experiencing at the time with the wheat, the barley, the combination, as they start to consume this. And then they start to chug it.
I would like you to make a Constitution saving throw, please.
That's going to be an 18.
Okay. You make your save. So there's no real pain associated with this, but as you're nearing the bottom of that tankard, you are overwhelmed with the memory of Quinn's first and only drink. With family, it was a beer. It was awful. Had about half of it, and then all of it came back up with everything else in Quinn's stomach at the time. And that memory just assaults you right as you get to the bottom of that glass, the bottom of that tankard. I mean.
And Reve is going to slam the tankard down and go, "Oh, that was offensive." Not aware that no one else is experiencing the memory that Reve is experiencing.
And so Marin looks at you a little bit like offended on behalf of the bartender standing right across from you behind the bar. Quinn, that's poor manners. This beer is delicious.
Reve, I am Reve. Quinn.
Right, sorry. Reve, but please. You drank the whole thing. This beer is fine.
Quinn thinks it's offensive.
What?
Quinn thinks it's offensive. Remember, I get flashes sometimes.
All right, so what did Reve think?
I think it's a little delightful.
All right, bartender, Reve will have one more. I'm still on my first, so I'll catch up and then we go upstairs.
Are you supposed to drink this slower?
Yes.
Oh. And then Reve is kind of just going to sip more cautiously. A bit.
Maybe some stew as well, please. The two of you are treated rather well here, despite this being a really rowdy place. There's literally kind of like a party going on behind you. People bump into you occasionally as they dance and sing and just kind of make merry around you. But you do manage to get a quick meal in at the bar and another drink before Marin is eventually beckoning you. All right, please, let's go upstairs. We need to get some rest, find you some better clothing, and then go visit the conservatory in the morning.
All right. And Reve will begrudgingly follow Marin. Still very excited about what was happening in the tavern, though.
Okay. As you're like looking longingly over your shoulder.
It's definitely like a parent dragging their kid away from Disneyland moment.
Yeah. So you'll turn out of the entrance to the tavern, just swinging doors essentially. Walk down another door or two and find another door that leads to a set of stairs and up to apartments. This is a series of stairs and landings. You actually have to walk up to the 3rd floor and down a hall, basically mimicking that same shape of the bar, this long hall. Like, these are deep buildings. So you walk the full length down to an apartment at the very end. And you see Marin fumbling with the small cannon out of the pocket and then this giant ring of keys out of the pocket. And it's like 24 keys. You can't possibly imagine what these all belong to, but starts shuffling through key. Sticks one into the lock of the door and then swings the door open into a pitch black room. Huh, that's odd. I thought I left a light on in here. Marin takes a step inside, and you hear a... Marin falls over.
As Marin falls over, Quinn does have... Let's see here. Devil's Sight. So you can see normally in dim light and darkness, both magical and non-magical, within 120 feet of yourself.
So you can see into the darkness, and you'll notice Marin has just been hit on the head by something big and dark and falls sideways to the floor. He is still conscious. He's pushing himself back up onto hands and knees. Going to need you to roll initiative, please.
All right. Okay. 18.
All right, let's see here. Okay. Marin pushing themselves up off the floor. What in the bloody hell? It is going to be your turn. It is pitch black in this room.
Okay.
However, with your, what was it, Devil's Sight?
Yes.
You can see essentially everything. This is a very lavishly decorated studio, like open floor plan studio. It's not a large space, but it is dressed in a way to make it appear larger than it would be. There's a big like area rug that takes up the center of the floor, a long loungy couch on one end. There's a big like easel style work table, and then there's just trinkets on countertops and little workstations set up on what should be like the kitchen counter is actually apparently a small like alchemist's setup. You notice other little just gears and gadgets and contraptions all over. There's just details galore to be taken in. But standing in the very center of the room is a tall, humanoid-looking figure in dark robes. And just inside the door, kind of mostly blocked by the wall, but just out of sight, is a big hulking mass of black. You can't really see what it is, but you know that it is massive, and one of its limbs is what reached out and hit Marin.
Okay. So Reve is going to go ahead and they are going to use what's called primal savagery. You channel primal magic to cause your teeth or fingernails to sharpen and deliver a coercive attack. So it's a melee spell attack against one creature within 5 feet of you. I am going to aim toward the black mass that is next to the door because that is the closest. And as Reve is channeling this, there is this eerie aura that starts to kind of pulsate out of Reve and then channel down their arms toward their fingertips, and their fingernails start to lengthen like claws, and they're going to slash out at this mass.
Sick. Go ahead and make your attack roll.
All right. That is going to be okay. 18 on the roll plus 5.
That hits.
Okay. And this is going to be 2d10 of acid damage.
Okay.
If I'm in d10s. Okay. And that's an 18.
Let's see. You said 18 damage.
Mm-hmm.
And that was acid damage, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Ooh, it's rolling.
But this was a melee spell attack, right? So you reached out and
Yeah.
clawed and it just leaves. Okay.
Yeah.
So as you draw your hand back, on your claws are these just clumps of black wool. Like torn off of this thing and just entwined, wrapped around each of your fingers now.
All right. And Reve is going to look at the black wool. Their fingernails return to normal after the spell completes. And then for their bonus action, they're going to use Pack of the Blade, and they are going to conjure a weapon in hand. So Reve is going to stick out their hand, and again, that pulsating aura starts to form around their body, shift again down their arm into this mass that is in the middle of the palm. And as they start to enclose their hand around this mass, it takes shape into a trident.
Okay. Do you only conjure it on your bonus action, or can you do anything with it?
Only conjure it.
Okay. Is that it for Reve?
Yes, and that'll be it for Reve.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just making
Marin is going to use half their movement to stand the rest of the way up. And not having Devil Sight, start to panic a little bit. What the fuck was that? And start turning around. Reve, are you there? I can't see anything.
Let me think. Sorry, I'm like thinking of the way that it's functioned. Would the black mass that Reve sees, is it on the left?
It is to your right.
To the right.
Yeah. And Marin is kind of in front of you. And it is also to Marin's right.
Okay. So Reve is going to say, on your right.
Marin is like essentially spinning around, you'll notice. So I'm going to roll a d4 and see which direction he's going to aim. Okay. And then I'm going to... You can see this clearly. Marin is sort of fumbling back in that big pocket again, pulls out that little cannon, and while turning around goes, all right, turns to the right, after having just been facing you, so essentially turning to face the left wall of his apartment. And you hear a whoosh, and you watch as flames just come erupting out of this tiny little contraption in his hand and just wash over what appeared to be a small, like, love couch, and then, like, up the wall. And Marin panics, freaks out, but still can barely only see what's happening in front of him because of whatever kind of magical darkness is happening inside.
Okay.
You hear from that figure standing in the center of the room, fools. That is going to be it for Marin's turn, and that will bring us to that dark figure who is, let's see here, going to take a few steps closer. And begin chanting. You'll hear this odd language. Do you speak deep speech?
That's what I was just checking. It looks like Reve has Common, Dwarvish, and Elvish.
Okay.
And then let me
You
see.
won't.
Just want to make sure there's nothing as far as class features. Okay. Nope, nothing else as far as class features.
Okay. Then you won't understand the words that are being spoken, but as this person begins chanting, what sounds like a just regular speaking voice begins to almost sound like it's being magically enhanced, like it suddenly becomes a booming voice, but it feels like the booming is just directly into your ears, like there's speakers right next to your ears. I need you to make a wisdom saving throw, please.
Wisdom, that's going to be a 15.
That'll save.
Okay.
So that booming, reverberating sound will eventually begin to fade as you kind of just try to feel yourself and center yourself on that pole, that thread, that's kind of like at the core of your being since you've awakened. When you pull yourself back to that, you're able to shove off whatever effect is about to take place.
Okay.
That, however, will bring us to the giant mass of blackness to your right,
All
which is
right.
going to take a half step to the side, directly in front of you, essentially blocking the doorway. And you'll see pretty clearly now, this is a massive golem-like creature. It is a big humanoid-shaped mass of wool, walking black wool. It almost appears to like writhe, like each individual strand shifts and pulls.
Okay.
And you hear the like shuffling of, wool clothing as its arm reaches out and tries to bash you up against the door. It's going to be let's see here. Oops, looking at the wrong. That'll be a 12 versus your armor class.
That'll hit.
Okay. So this is going to just kind of push you up against the door. It will be, let's see, 2d8. Where did I put my d8? 2d8 plus 4. 8 and 12 plus 4. That is 16 bludgeoning damage.
Okay. Let's see here. All right.
And then it's going to attempt to grab you with its other hand and start to just try to like ensnare you with wool. You're going to like feel its fingers start to grow as the threads unravel and begin to try to wind their way around you. That is a 11 for your armor class.
That will miss.
Okay. So as you feel them starting to like try to wind their way around your neck, you just kind of duck your head around them and shift back to the side. And it almost kind of weaves its own hands together momentarily before you hear it rip them back apart.
Okay.
That will be it for its turn. That will bring us back to you.
All right. Am I restrained by this creature?
No, you're not. It
Okay.
tried to grapple you. It did not.
Okay. And how far is the one in the center?
Only about 15 feet from you.
Okay, perfect. I'll say, but I'm still right next to the creature, the golem.
Yes, it is within 5 feet of you.
Okay. So Warlock's gonna Warlock, and we're gonna Eldritch Blast the guy in the center of the room.
Okay.
All right, and that is going to be a 19 to hit.
19 to hit. That will hit for sure.
Okay, and then that's going to be 6 points of damage, and I get 2 beams actually. So one more beam. That's going to be 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 to hit.
Also hits.
Okay. And then that one, is going to be a 12. So 6 and 12.
So 6 and 12. Okay, thank you. 18 damage total. So massive 2 bolts. What do these look like?
So this Eldritch Blast, it is going to start forming again that pulsating aura. Like the minute that Reve came into battle, this aura has just kind of clung to Reve. And you see this wave, this turquoise kind of colored wave coming down their hands into the palm. And Reve is just going to take their hand and they're kind of like going to toss it out. And this pulsating orb of the blast, leaving like a streak, almost looking like, I'm trying to think of a good way to like, drops of water following behind it. As it impacts, it just looks like this splash of water that almost looks consuming on the being in the center of the room.
And they seem to do like just massive damage to this thing. You hear the figure shriek. And you can tell, even through all of this darkness and stuff, it's like kind of hunched over, clutching at its chest where it was hit. It's trying to prop itself up. You see now it's holding like a crook in its hand, and it's attempting to like hold itself upright with this now.
Interesting. All right, and then Reve is going to go ahead and use Awaken Mind on that creature in the center of the room as well.
Okay.
This is going to be a Wisdom saving throw. They have to beat a 13. And if they fail it, they will have disadvantage on any attacks against me, and I will have advantage on any attacks against it during this bond.
They needed to beat a what?
A 13 Wisdom save.
Okay. I got a 10.
Okay.
So disadvantage on attacks against you, and you have advantage against
them.
It.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
All right, and that should be the rest of my actions.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm not going to move away because it's an opportunity attack. So we're going to stay put.
That's going to bring us to Marin then. Let's see here. Marin's gonna shout out, Quinn, what's behind me? What? Where are they? What are they?
I'm not sure. Let's see here. Do I know exactly how Marin is standing, though?
You can see Marin, yeah.
Okay. And are they facing away from me or facing me?
They are facing the wall to your left still.
Wall to my left. Okay.
So if they turned left, they would be facing you. If they turned right, they'd be facing the figure in the center of the room, the shepherd-looking one.
Okay. And the creature is still directly in front of me.
Between you and Marin, yep.
Okay. All right. There's someone in the center of the room, but there is a golem directly in front of me. To your right.
So I'm surrounded.
We're surrounded.
You said golem. Wait, I have something for that. And begins searching through pockets. Pulls out a large-looking little piece of metal. It almost looks like a whistle or a flute or a bell or something like that. And then another little thinner rod of sorts. This should do the trick. Raises it up, and then with one sharp rap, just hits the little, what you call it, tube, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And this blastingly loud ringing noise comes out of it. Let's see here. I'm going to have to make Constitution saving throws for the other two. Constitution. So the shepherd fails. And so does the golem. And they will each take... What else left? They're each going to take 10 damage as Marin uses his fancy little contraption to essentially replicate the effects of a shatter spell.
Nice.
The shepherd figure shrieks, like loudly, and begins coughing. And you can tell from there, they're holding their hands up to their ears, and there's blood running down, and they're coughing up blood. No, stop. The golem in front of you seems smaller. You can see little golden beady eyes showing through the wool now. And in the center of the chest, you can see what looks to be stacked golden bands. Like where the heart would be, almost. You see 3 bands about an inch apart on top of each other.
Okay.
Did that do anything?
Well, you definitely fucked up the guy in the middle of your room. And the golem is looking a little smaller.
All right, good, because I'm pretty sure I probably broke every glass bottle in my room at the same time. Let's finish this already. With that, it's going to be the shepherd's turn, who's going to, let's see, close the distance between them and Marin, and just attempt to whack Marin with their crook, which is a nat 1. So they miss.
Nice.
They will lose hold of the crook and fall to their knees. In a last-ditch effort to do anything, they're going to throw their hood back and you'll feel them kind of like make eye contact or like lock onto you as you hear them beginning to whisper. This is going to be a psychic attack of sorts. It is a 20 versus your armor class.
Okay, that is going to hit.
Okay.
And is that with disadvantage or?
Sorry. That is a 10 versus your armor class. Thank you for reminding me.
Well, that's my job. I'm the one that casts a spell. I should know what it does.
Yeah. So with the disadvantage imposed,
that'll miss.
so the figure, they throw back their hood, and as they're pulling their hands off their ears, they're trying to focus on you, and they're whispering to themselves, and you can see blood begins to pour down out of their nose, and one of their eyes just starts to close. They're focusing so hard, and nothing happens. That'll bring us back to the golem, who's going to take another crack at you. Wants to just straight up push you right back into the door. That's going to be a 17 versus your armor class.
That'll hit.
Okay. That'll be 2d8 plus 4. That's 4 plus 4. That's 8 bludgeoning damage.
Okay. All right.
And then one more time trying to grab you, but this is an 11. So I feel like that doesn't hit either.
No, that won't hit.
Okay. Then that'll bring us back to your turn.
Reve is getting a little annoyed at this golem. He's like, this fucker. And then he's going to take... They're going to take the trident, and they're going to use Green Flame Blade. And that will be 15 to hit.
That'll hit.
Okay. So it's going to be 1d8. And then... Okay. All right. Now, do I add it to my melee?
The green flame, like the damage?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So it's 1d8 on my melee attack and then another d8. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 points of damage, and 5 of those are fire damage.
5 are fire?
Mm-hmm.
So 8 regular, 5 fire?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's actually going to be 18 damage.
Okay.
You'll notice as the green flame blade, I assume this is a stabbing motion, right? Because we're talking a trident here.
Yeah.
The center point of the trident kind of alights with the green flame, and as it pierces the wool, parts of the wool begin to singe and burn away, and that hole remains even after you pull the trident back out.
And Reeve's going to smirk a little bit and stings, doesn't it? And then they are going to go ahead and hex the shepherd for their bonus action. Let me see here. And that is going to be... I'm trying to make sure... Nope, no saving throw. Okay, yeah. So they're going to go ahead and hex the shepherd's... Let's say wisdom.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to hex wisdom. Okay. And that'll be it for Reve.
Okay. Marin now can tell that there's something right next to him. Is this the golem or is this the guy? And he's just kind of like fumbling around, reaching around. You see him like batting at wool, cloak, fabric. Kind of like fumbling in the darkness. Which one is this?
It doesn't matter, just fucking hit it.
All right, fair enough. Let's see, where's my clappers? Begins, like, digging into coat. Pulls out just these two, what look like they should be, just like chalk erasers for like a chalkboard.
Mm-hmm.
If you would kindly get the fuck out of my house, slams them together. And you hear the sound of like a thunder wave go off in front of that. Let's see. This actually replicates thunder wave, so it's going to have to make a Constitution saving throw, which is going to be a failure. They're going to take 2d8 thunder damage and be blasted 10 feet back. This just outright kills them. You see, Reve can see where this person was like kind of already bleeding profusely from like every hole on their face. They just are suddenly blanked out and like their face becomes a bloody mess. They go flying backwards 10 feet. They're blasted back almost into a sitting position on Marin's couch. And they just stop moving entirely. The darkness disappears immediately. So you can see plainly now the giant like obsidian figure in front of you is just stitched together black wool, all woven. It's almost like one single thread, all just spun somehow into the shape of this massive hulking humanoid figure. But with the lights on, you can see them like writhing and pulling and twitching as though they were moving muscles. And even more plainly now, you can see in the very center of it is what looks to be like the smaller approximation of a humanoid shape banded with 3 golden rings. There's like something in its center mass that is glowing with those 3 rings.
Okay.
That will bring us back to its turn. It is going to try to grab you first this time with a nat 1.
Okay. No.
So it will essentially reach out towards you and weave itself into the door frame. And it's sort of stuck there, restrained for a moment. And it's going to lose its next action, which will bring us back to you.
All right. Reve looks at the thing that's in the bands and go, huh, interesting. And they are going to use their Eldritch Blast again, but very specifically honing in on those 3 bands and the thing that is in there.
Okay.
First hit is a 21.
I'll hit.
And then the second hit is going to be it's a 19 on the dice. So
That'll also hit.
okay. I was like, we're just gonna, yeah, that should do the thing. All right.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be 2d10s. So that's a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 7 for one beam and 5 for the other. So that's 12 total.
12 damage?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That is just enough to turn the table here.
That's not right. 7, 8, 9. 9 and 7. So it's actually going to be 16 points of damage total. I forgot to add the +2 for the beams.
Okay. That will more than do it then. So this was 2 Eldritch Beams, 2 Eldritch Blasts. Same style, right? That kind of watery looking effect. And it just begins to corrode and dampen the wool immediately. And it's almost like it's sticking together. And this cavity just begins to open up. And right there in the center of this open hole is what looks to be like a doll of sorts out of the same material, this black wool, but along the torso of this doll are just these 3 golden bands with these little runes kind of inscribed all around them, holding it in place, or kind of like holding it together while it's attached to the rest of the wool, via strands and whatnot. But it's just right there in front of you. You can just reach out, grab it, and yank it free.
Okay. And Reve is going to do that. They're going to take their hand and just like shove it in and wrench it out.
The wool immediately just falls into a shapeless lump at your feet. A massive shapeless lump, mind you, but a pile 4 or 5 sheep's worth of shorn wool just falls down at your feet as this thing just dissipates right in front of you. In your hand is this little totem of runic magic of some sorts. Hard to tell exactly where it comes from, but this seems to have been the core of the golem, you gather.
Okay. Reve's going to kind of turn it around in their hand, look at it, and then toss it to Marin and be like, figure this out.
Let's see if Marin is ready to catch that. They do. Looks at it very confusedly. I am far too tired to figure this out right now, but if I've any materials left, and he begins to kind of like look around his apartment, and you see a kind of crestfallen look fall on his face as a lot of the surfaces are destroyed. Like a lot of his workstations have been tossed and turned over. Things are damaged all around him. Well, yes, come morning, I might be able to salvage some of this equipment, and maybe we can figure out what exactly this was. What an awful mess. Looking back over his shoulder at the dead body on the couch behind him. Perhaps we'd better go fetch the headmaster now.
That's probably in our better interest. Where's your wardrobe?
Points to the other corner. Just over there.
All right. And Reve is going to go over there. Thankfully, they're a very decisive person, and they look for a very ruffly or frilly shirt, which I feel like they probably have no problem finding.
They don't. Marin only owns ruffled or frilly shirts.
And they're going to go ahead and put that on, recognizing that's a little large on them, the shirt at least. They also find a belt and kind of clasp it at their waist, so it kind of creates like a little bit of an, I don't want to say an hourglass shape, but kind of like an A line. There we go, with the bottom half of the shirt. And then they find probably like they're looking for like a luxurious like velvet fabric in either like a black or deep purple.
Yeah, all of those colors. Marin has a rainbow of assortments. Like it just every option you could possibly. Marin has clearly only put their money into like experimenting with trinkets and chemicals and clothing. There's no food here. There's no drink up here. It's just those 2 things essentially. So yeah, your heart's desire essentially.
All right, fantastic. So Reve's going to throw those on very quickly. And they're going to look back and they're going to grab some leather gloves and put those on as well.
Those are my work gloves. Fine. The headmaster's going to get a kick out of seeing you like this.
Well, let's go meet this prestigious headmaster.
Yes, I think perhaps I should lock this up for now. We'll have to bring them back over here. All right, let's go. And with that, I think we'll end for this evening. We'll be back soon with more Table for Two. And I think next time, Jana, will you be in the DM seat?
I believe I will.
All right. I look forward to it. We'll see you all soon.
All right. We'll see ya.